All right. So, this is I don't know why I haven't done it until now. I'm just sort of doing it right anyway. Right? Because I know I've had some people asking me about the PC specs and things like that. So I thought I'd cover it. Because, you know, like, sometimes sometimes Japanese companies, they're terrible at this. I don't know if it's a translation issue or they sort of go, listen, look, just to be absolutely sure, if your computer can pilot a space station, yeah, right, or every naughty toy down at the local prawn shop, then okay, we're good to go, right? You'll be fine with our game. So, a couple of things that I'll get into in this video. Anyway, so these are the specifications for Mortal Kombat 1. You've got the minimum specs. Obviously, you've got to have a 64-bit processor and operating system. So naturally, you've got to have Windows 10 64. Recommended, you can have 10 or 11 64, doesn't matter. Minimum spec is either an i5 6600 or an AMD Ryzen 3 3100 or Ryzen 5 2600. Or recommended an i5 8400 or an AMD Ryzen 5 3600. So it's not bad. Like it's even though it's a different aesthetic, essentially it's basically looking like it's the same engine, right? Q-Lock did a really good job with optimization, I thought, with MK11, even though it's a trash game. At least the trash ran well. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, it's like when you get a bin liner for your garbage bin, right? It's all scented and it smells good. Even though it's for trash. That's what MK11 was. Ran well. That's the bin liner for the trash. The game. I don't make the rules, man. Right? Anyway. So, minimum memory, 8GB each. The graphics card, this is where it gets interesting. So, my son currently at the moment, he has a GTX 980 Ti. So this one's asking for the standard 980 as minimum, or an AMD Radeon RX 470 or an Intel Arc A750. I believe the Intel Arcs, they're what, on board? Yeah, is that correct? Or is that in the laptops? I don't know. Right. Obviously, DirectX version will be 12 for each, and of course 100GB available space for both. But the graphics card for recommended, now I actually have right this second a 1080 Ti, right? So I'm pretty much, I'm allowed in the door, but I'm still, you know, I'm probably still eating, you know, at the reject table, right? Because there's probably some things that are going to be available in MK1. Like ray tracing, like DLSS or whatever it is, DLSR, whatever the hell it's called, right? There's always something, right? I'm going to be missing out on some of that stuff because of my graphics card. However, we are upgrading the graphics card, right? And then I'm going to be leading. I'm not going to be just eating at the bitch bench. I'm going to be controlling all the bitch benches because I'm going to, you know, shut up. Anyway, right? Or an AMD Radeon RX 5700 XT or an Intel Arc A770. So, now, getting into, like, so PC specs, so with a console, you're locked, right? They did give you options with some console games over time, you know, whether you go either performance or quality, right? So that's kind of like a very, very, like, you know, PC light experience. But on PC itself, I want you to keep something in mind. Two things. You can scale your game to how you like, right? If you've got a beast system, then you should be able to max out everything because you paid for it, right? But if you find that your game is struggling, okay, there are, like, you can obviously go, this is why a lot of graphic options are very helpful. Some people get intimidated, but what it actually does is it allows you to choose presets first and foremost, either low, medium, high, very high, ultra, extreme, you know, biggest Johnson on the block, right? So, you know, shut up, right? Anyway, so what you do is if you're, you know, if you are struggling, say you max it, say you put everything on high, very high, and it's running like crap. You're not really sure, you're still new to PC, so what you can do is you can drop it down to medium. If the game runs better, then what you do is you look through the graphic options, you go, okay, what if I increase shadows, or what if I increase textures or whatever? And you can bump them up incrementally to like high, you know, and then if you get back in the game and everything runs fine, you're like, oh, okay, so maybe I can bump this up further. Sometimes game developers don't code their games properly either. So the best example I can think of for myself is Deus Ex Mankind Divided, right? Which had like this, it was sort of this really, my system like absolutely caned it. Like it was fine, you know, running in terms of like, yeah, it was, you know, my system was easily going to handle it. But one of the settings in the game, I think it was an AA setting or something, anti-aliasing, whatever. It didn't matter what setting you had it on, it would run like trash. It doesn't matter what your rig is. It doesn't matter whether you can brute force through the bad coding. It would always crank the frame rate right down, right? I mean, these are some of the weird things with PC. I remember with Fear. You guys remember Fear, that shooter? Terrifying. Still terrifies the crap out of me, right? Awesome game, right? Wear 3 nappies when you play it, boys and girls. Anyway, if for whatever strange reason I had my Logitech USB wireless adapter on, right? So if I hadn't flicked the switch to turn it off, because I've got like a USB hub with individual buttons, it would tank the frame rate. There's no reason for it. There's no logic for it. I cannot, for the life of me, figure out the connection. But after lots of research, I figured out and found somebody that's like, yeah, if you've got this USB from Logitech, you know, for the wireless bit active, like, you know, turned on, it'll tank your frame rate. So you turn it off and the game runs fine. It's so weird. It makes no sense, right? But these are some of the little misgivings and annoyances that you get with PC. But the trade-off is you're going to have games that literally you're going to want to take your clothes off and throw yourself at the screen because it's so sexy. You're like, I don't care how I look. Just take me, baby. Right? Just take me. Right? You know, do the whole Natara thing. Oh, you can do anything you want with me, Mortal Kombat. Shut up. It's like nearly 2 o'clock in the morning. Right? I've had sleep. Don't worry. I like being a night owl. Anyway. So, moving on. So, you can scale the performance of the game. So, if you feel like, you know, it's running poorly, set it to low, set it to medium, then fiddle with settings from there. You can do research onto what is good, what is not. Sometimes, like I said, a setting itself will not be coded correctly, so it doesn't matter how powerful your rig is, it'll gimp it. Okay? Generally not. Generally things are okay. But, you know, ultimately you should be fine with at the very least the recommended. See, I sort of, when I see minimum and recommended, my brain goes, okay, the minimum in my head is the recommended. Right? I mean, what's the minimum mean? You load it up and you're running at 15 frames, like, right? So, but like, you should be fine, right? And there's a lot of other things that come into it as well. Like, you know, do you have 50 billion things open in the background, right? Like, all running and all sorts of stuff like that. You know, you got like one program over here, one program over here, and everything's, you know, like, and if you got like an ageist system, an elder system, then yeah, some things might sort of, you know, impede that if you don't have much RAM. Like, it's asking for, like, you know, recommended and minimum 8 gig of RAM, and that's fine. But, like, depending on, you know, I always think the minimum that you should have is about 32. I think that's a really solid number, right? But Windows itself uses memory, other bits and pieces. I'm looking at my memory usage right now. Like, Chrome is sitting almost at 1,000, 1,000 megabytes, so 1 gigabyte. of memory, just with Chrome, almost, okay? Streamlabs was what I'm using to record this on. That's using about 440 megabyte of the memory, right? But I've got like 32 gig in there, DDR5, right? I mean, we're shaved and ready to go, baby, right? But like, if you've got less than that, then, you know, and if you do notice things are struggling, check your usage, all that sort of jazz. You know, if you haven't sort of applied thermal paste to your CPU for a while. So, and keep in mind, like, consoles have this stuff too. Don't think you get away with this. You know, you get away from this as a console user. No, or your console is a PC. They always have been. It's just that they try and sort of like minimize everything and make it so that you don't have to open this stuff up every 6 months to reapply something. But, you know, every CPU requires thermal paste under it because it's connecting, you know, to then a heatsink or a fan. If you have metal on metal, everything will just overheat. So, you know, if like you're running the game, and certain games can be fairly CPU intensive, you know, even simply just like a CPU that's struggling because it doesn't have the right lubrication between, shut up, right? The lubrication between the two pieces of metal, CPU and the heatsink, then yeah, that can even cause frame rate issues as well, right? This is why, one thing, I champion PC gaming on this channel for fighting games. Like, everyone else is doing console stuff, right? But for me, PC gaming, you know, fighting game community is growing. I'm gonna talk about PC fighting games, right? They're pretty much everywhere else anyway, but I'm going to champion this cause because not many people are. And that way, when people come here and they go, oh, you know, it's struggling, blah, blah, blah. I've got the specs, everything's running, but it's running funny. What's going on? And it's like, look, listen, man, you got to close the 50 Pornhub tabs you got open, right? You know what I'm saying, dude? You probably got about 1,000 viruses coming in. You know exactly who I'm talking about, right? You know exactly who I'm talking about. You just live with yourself. You just live with yourself, right? Anyway. So yeah, so this will be good too. So what I'd like to do is that if people are struggling, once this game comes out on PC, keep in mind too that if you go to, this is the Steam page for the game, right? This is the Steam page. If you go to the community hub, right? And then go discussions, you can get in here and then actually like type in problems as well. Okay, this is the wonderful thing about Steam, right? You've got direct communities tied to every single game that's released. You can go in there and say, hey, this is running like crap. Of course, I covered the fact that they got Denuvo in there as well, which is going to be a massive problem too, right? Or it may not be, but it could be. You know, Denuvo is horrible. Every single game gets it removed eventually anyway, right? So yeah, just yeah, so you've got all those options available to you, which makes it a lot easier to get help and to figure things out. Unlike a console where everything's very controlled, PC, obviously, personal computer, that's what it stands for. You can do whatever you want with it. And sometimes whatever you want with it doesn't work out. It's kind of like sin in that respect. You can do whatever you want, but eventually it's going to kick in the ass. So you just got to be mindful, careful, and, you know, close all those tabs, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, guys, I'll leave it there. Let me know what you think. I'll post a link for the Mortal Kombat 1 Steam page as well, so you guys can check it out. So anyway, catch you next time.